Hi everyone, my name is Athena and today I'm going to be showing you some tricks that I like to do around the kitchen and share some safety tips to try and help you guys kind of ease into the kitchen for those who may not be familiar with cooking or certain kitchen appliances. So one of the first tips that I would like to share with you is kitchen safety. So here I have a knife. Don't do what you just did there. But here is our knife. And the first thing that you want to do, obviously, is not to kind of point this at anyone and kind of run around with a knife or walk fast with a knife just in case you might bump into anyone. And even if there's no one around you, make sure that you know where the knife is at all times. And also always carry your knife by the handle just like this. And I will be sharing you guys an example of how to cut food. So here's a clear example right here with a stick of celery. This is great as an example. And you can also use carrots or zucchini or cucumbers. But even though I've got nails on, the first thing that you want to do is, even if you're prepping with vegetables, is typically cut off the ends that you would like to discard and keep your non-dominant hand in a claw shape just like this, and using your dominant hand on the handle, chop in a motion like this. You kind of want to go in a rocking back and forth motion, and this is the kind of motion that you will be using when you are using your knife. And so you can continue this step depending on the quarter pieces that you'd like to cut, and kind of just maintaining that balance, and depends on how thick you'd like your pieces. And a tip for cutting thin slices for me is kind of holding your knife very close to your claw hand and making sure that your hand is always like this so that you're not cutting yourself. Slowly inching your non-dominant hand back so that your knife can just glide right through just like this. And here you can just slide off your vegetables, and that is how you can use a knife when cutting vegetables. Just keep doing this rocking back and forth motion and keep practicing until you've got it ready. And you can increase the speed whenever you're comfortable. Now, once you've cut up all of your vegetables, like my celery right here, I've got them in thin slices. A huge tip, and also remember to wash your hands before and after. Dealing with food of any kind, I've already done that. Go ahead and grab a airtight container with a lid. Just because there's a huge misconception where if you simply place your vegetables or exposed fruits or meats into a bowl and just put it in the fridge, it can still last not as long as if it were to be in a airtight sealed container. Even if you apply cling wrap on top of a bowl, I highly recommend putting all of your stored goods in an airtight container. Now, the next thing I'd like to discuss is the microwave. We've all used one of these before, at least once in our lives. And we all know that the control right here is to input the time that we'd like to cook our food. Most people go for a minute, maybe 2 minutes, depending on how hot you'd like your food. A lot of people fail to realize, especially when you're making ramen or foods that contain liquids, they go to a very easy high boiling point. So some people like to microwave their ramen noodles or their mac and cheese in here, and sometimes if it's put way too high, as the instructions on packages typically go for 3 or 4 minutes, typically the liquids inside your food will overflow because it has gone to such a high boiling point, and sometimes you can be left with a sticky plate at the bottom. So a tip that I would like to recommend is make sure that you're always cooking your food with the timer in intervals. So 1 minute or 2 minutes at a time, depending on the food that you are making, especially ramen or mac and cheese, anything that has to do with noodles or liquids or a broth, including soup even. Sometimes it can bubble over because you underestimate the power of your microwave. Now, another tip that I'd like to share is the fridge. This is my fridge right here. And obviously we have what's ever in the freezer, but I'd like to talk about the bottom portion of the fridge. So here on the right side, I keep my sauces and my drinks here, but my drink section's full. So I've got a leftover drink over here. People forget that you can control the settings of how cold your fridge can be, especially for different types of food that people like to eat. But what I'd like to discuss is the way you can set up the produce in your fridge to efficiently utilize and kind of max out your fridge. So here at the bottom, I've kept all of my vegetables here, but I recommend keeping your leftover foods or your vegetables in at least one shelf and kind of organize that. So in the bottom shelves, usually what is best to keep here would be potatoes or onions. Onions can also be stored outside in a dry, cool space to save up some room in your fridge. But the most perishable foods, I recommend putting more towards the front, and foods like pickled vegetables or pickles can go in the back as they have a longer shelf life. And I've got some yogurt and some tofu, which are slightly more perishable, which is why they're somewhat towards the front. And so I highly recommend using the drawers for foods that you're not going to use right away. This is how you can efficiently store food in your fridge and make sure that all of your fruits and vegetables are not all the way at the very back of your fridge, where it's extremely difficult to remember what you have, and by the time you check, they can just go bad. One more thing that I'd like to mention before I end this video are instant crock pots or air fryers. Now, these can be somewhat dangerous if you don't know how to handle them, especially instant pots. For those of you who don't know, this is a pressurized cooker system that heavily fastens the need to boil your foods, such as stews that need to be cooked for 6 to 12 hours, or certain soups that need the bone in your bone broth to be broken down to a point where all of its juices can naturally come out and be absolutely delicious. Now, there have been many horror stories of instant crock pots exploding in people's faces due to the high pressure. Right above here is a air release valve. You're going to want to push on this button right here, depending on what crock pot you have. And this will allow for the pressurized heat air inside to release. Now, it's very important that you stay away from this because it's spraying very extremely hot mist. With air fryers, everything inside is being fried and cooked, and it can get extremely hot. So I highly recommend when you're cooking your foods, keep everything inside and make sure when your timer is off, let the food cool and make sure that it's safe to consume. But especially with this instant crock pot, remember to always keep your timers on when you're cooking your foods, and that way you can be reminded of whenever to come back and check on your foods, but also staying clear of this pressurized heat right here. And you always want to kind of keep lids away from you just so that nothing kind of hits you in the face. And so that this lid does not explode off of you. And once all of that steam comes out, you'll know when this rises back down that you will be absolutely safe to take off the lid and eat whatever is inside. Thank you for listening, and I hope you kind of had some advice and a little bit more intel on how to utilize your fridge for maximum usage, as well as kind of like the safety of using your microwave. To others, it can be common sense. To others, it may not. And it's just very safe, especially when you're boiling liquids in your microwave, to make sure that everything is not boiling over so that you don't have to clean your sticky microwave or plate, as well as using your knife safely, making sure that you don't cut yourself, because that does have very high risks for harming you. And the Instant Crock Pot is something that's usually left for adults to kind of use, especially if your parents may use them to cook. And the air fryer can also splash hot oil on you depending on whatever you're cooking. So I hope that this video gave you some insight and some help, and have a great day.